Hello everyone, welcome to another video where I will be continuing reading Unbirthday, A Twisted Tale. In the last chapter, Alice had reunited with the Mad Hatter, the Dodo, and the Dormouse, and they told her about how a woman named Marianne is supposed to be the big hero. Can Alice live up to the hype? Let's find out. Chapter 9. If their quest had not been so urgent, Alice would have truly enjoyed the travel by umbrella. It was restful, and all three escapees from the Queen looked gray and exhausted and absolutely filthy where there weren't streaks of blood. They could have slept for a week, it looked like. The Hatter scratched thoughtlessly under the tiny top hat covering his eye socket. If you don't mind me asking, Hatter," Alice asked, knowing she shouldn't, but she was always a curious girl, "whatever happened to your eye?" He looked over her, and she was startled by the moment of lucidity in his good eye. "Jump birds," he squeaked bleakly. "She threw me to her nest of them she kept hungry just for such a purpose. Wanted me to know where Marianne was. I never told. I wasn't the one who betrayed her." "Oh, how very brave of you," Alice breathed. "I'm so sorry." "Bravery is for kings and wingless pigs. I'm just a Mad Hatter. Well, I was once upon a time." Everyone lapsed into silence again. The umbrella twirled and the landscape rolled by, a little too slowly for Alice's liking. "I haven't heard any poetry yet," Alice eventually ventured. "There is always ever so much poetry in Wonderland. Has the Queen of Hearts done away with that too?" "Poetry. I say, poetry," the Dodo said, pounding one wing into the other. "Just what we need a spot of. Dormouse! Wake up, Dormouse! Some nice refreshing poetry. Come on!" Dismissing without wages the usually sleepy stages between unconsciousness and consciousness, the Dormouse immediately stood up, straight back, in full recital mode. "A dog and a cat and a droll wombat ran off to the Simmelung Sea. The sun shone fair in the immutable blue. 'Twas as delicious as a day could be. I spy a fish," said the critical cat, who liked trout fried in salt pudding. "We haven't a pole," the little dog barked as the bat was sticking a foot in. A flounder leapt up and glared at the three. "Our kind is not for your pleasure. Go back to the sands of our angler land. On the beach you'll find great numbers of shells and something really sparkly and nice to take home and put in the cabinet, maybe." And with that, the Dormouse fell straight forward onto the handle of the umbrella and began snoring. "Oh," Alice said, trying to work out what she had just heard. "That didn't end properly." I beg to differ. It ended most properly," the Dodo said, flicking a bit of lint off his cuff. "They left the fish alone and found some lovely thing like a pearl or an oscilloscope to bring back to Mother." But, or did it have ended, "On the beach you'll find great heaps of treasure"? That makes sense, and moreover around your pleasure, the way the other stanzas have the second and fourth lines rhyming. "You asked for poetry," the Dodo poet pointed out. "I certainly didn't ask for a poetical lesson. Next time recite something yourself. Actually, this is the next time, because you're next. Up, girl, recite." "Oh, I shouldn't," Alice said quickly. Everything I ever try to say here comes out all wrong." "Try something really easy," the Hatter said casually, but there might have been a twinkle in his eye. "Your national anthem, for instance." "Oh, of course. I know God Save the Queen back and forth," Alice said. "My sister and the silly man friend sing it all the time, even before they go to one of the ridiculous rallies." "Only fourth, please," the Dodo said hurriedly. "I don't think we have time for it back as well." "I can't stand in the umbrella without tipping it," she said, shuffling her feet. "I hope no one is offended." Then she cleared her throat and sang their familiar tune. "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing." No, wait, that's not right," she said, frowning. "It doesn't even mention the Queen." "I rather like it," the Hatter said. "That's what we need around here. That's what we need right now, anyway. Liberty. And no more queens. Ever." Somehow the trees had fallen away without her noticing. The cozy forest had been replaced by what seemed like endless silver water that rippled and waved randomly. Alice dipped a finger in and tasted a drop. It was indeed salty, perhaps even saltier than the North Sea, and much, much warmer. Body temperature, one might even say. They had come to the Sea of Tears. "Does this leave us off in the hallway with a keyhole?" she asked. "Only in March. Everyone out!" the Hatter ordered. The Dodo scooped up the dormouse and stepped forward. The umbrella, now somehow washing up onto a tiled floor, was much more stable, and he disembarked with great aplomb. Alice followed, and the Hatter came last, pushing his umbrella back into the water. "Aren't you taking it?" Alice asked. "No, it has filled out its term of service. Time for it to be free." He took off his large hat and waved a goodbye. The umbrella handle uncurled and waved eerily back. Then it sort of pointed itself and dove under water like a sea serpent, his clothed spine splitting into two rear fins. The black and white tiled floor they now trod on continued on an uphill slant away from the water, occasionally making sharp slanted turns into still wave shapes. It took Alice a moment to realize they were dunes. The squares changed size as required to fill in properly, but never curved or altered their straight lines and angles. The resulting mosaic was dizzying and impossible to focus on. Beyond this they came to a well-grazed monochrome sward, and beyond that a lovely little English village. At first glance, at any rate, it appeared to be a lovely English village. There were houses, a main street, a horse fountain, people hurrying about at market. All the colors were right. All the movements seemed normal. But the houses were built one on top of the other. Literally. A large family house painted bright yellow with an airy porch and slate shingles was balanced on the roof of a lovely flag and riverstone one-room cabin, and squarely on top of that was a narrow three-brick townhouse. A Greenwich's delight with round towers and intricately decorated caves supported a solid farmhouse, perfectly symmetrical with 3 windows on the upper floor and a door between 2 windows on the bottom. The chimneys had to stick out sideways, of course, because this abode had what appeared to be a seaside shack, complete with a bathing machine atop. The fountain, a horse trough in the market square, didn't seem to be working and was more of a too-high for horses. A stone pillar held up a wide concave disc filled with water. When someone wanted a drink, he or she perched on the rim and bent over, taking delicate sips. And therein lay the biggest surprise, or perhaps not so much considering it was Wonderland. The people of the village had somehow avian tendencies. Most sported beaks. Many had feathers, though the women often kept theirs under caps or oiled up into fancy designs and circules that looked like hats at first. Wings were used like hands, and unshod feet had claws. "What the blazes is going on here?" the Hatter asked, blinking at the sight. Alice looked at him in surprise. Surely he couldn't have found anything particularly unusual in this scene. This was his native land, and strange was normal, the odd the everyday to Wonderlandians. So she looked at everything in sight, trying to imagine she was a local. Then she saw it. The inhabitants moved as if haunted. They slunk in the way birds shouldn't, hunkering down so their wing bells made it look as though they were hunchbacked. Their heads turned quickly this way and that, birds' eyes taking in the view in quick and feral glances. Everywhere signs had been hastily amended with splatters of paint, the symbol of a rabbit added to a sweet shop, a butcher, a tailor. Sometimes it was Red Heart, but mostly a rabbit. Sometimes the rabbit was red, but mostly he was white. In the market around the bird bath was a large, ugly, and hastily made statue that looked like it had been hammered together from spare bits of wood. Like a giant shrine, its base was covered in offerings of all sorts of food. But Alice couldn't figure out what the statue was at first, but it stuck out of it willy-nilly. Then as she was cocking her head and stepping back, it suddenly came to her all at once. It was a rabbit. "Hatter?" she said, nervous but unsure why. No, I don't like No, I don't like it. No, 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 that the Hatter said, sort of agreeing. But it was clear he was finally a little mad and of absolutely no help at all. He even seemed to have shrunk a little. The Dodo was busy washing his hands in the bath, and of course the Dormouse was asleep. So Alice screwed up her courage and approached one of the lorries hurrying by with a market basket on her arm. It was not, as Alice would have guessed, filled with seed. Instead, it was a mound of luscious-smelling soft hay and 3 beautifully washed-up carrots. "Pardon me. Oh, my!" It wasn't the giant, hooked orange beak or gorgeous yellow and blue chignon that the matronly woman had that shocked Alice. It was a hastily tied handkerchief. The 2 long ends were starched and twisted up a bit to look like rabbit ears. "What is going on here? Why all the rabbits?" "There is only one rabbit. There is only the one rabbit," the woman angrily hissed and whistled. "If he comes by, we're ready. We're like rabbits here. All bless the rabbit and keep him and his mistress safe. And out of our business." "We're a good town, we are," a budgie in a morning coat and bowler insisted as he walked by. There was a bit of white fluff sewn on his rear for a little tail. "Absolutely loyal. We gave up immediately. We did." "To whom? The Queen of Hearts?" "Never. To the Rabbit's men. He's to be trusted, of course. If he says that's what the Queen wants, that's what we'll do," the lawyer said with a demented air and a sniff. You tell him that if you seize him. Whatever he says goes with us here. Mayhap he'll put in good words to the Queen. Maybe she'll skip us on the next raid. But of course, whomever the rabbit follows, we're right with him," the budgie added quickly. Alice knew there was a song about this sort of thing, but couldn't quite remember it just then. In fact, she was thinking of the Vicar of Bray, but when she tried to remember the lyrics by the man who changed sides for whoever was in power, all she come up with was, "Whatsoever seemed to train. Still, I'll be quicker in May, sir." "Alice, I don't like it here," the Hatter said forlornly. "Let us move on." "Look, right up there," the lawyer said, pointing proudly at a rapidly growing pile of produce. "Offerings at the feet of the rabbit statue. A pile of lettuce. That's from me, much as it pleases him." And peases for him?" the Dodo asked interestingly. It appeases him," the budgie agreed sagely. "Wait, that's not right," Alice said, but she really wasn't paying attention any longer. For strange it was to see a town of birds be suddenly taken over by a fawning loyalty to rabbits, something stranger still managed to catch her eye. A shawled figure was adding his own offering to the pile of rabbit treats. He or she was entirely covered with robes and capes and cloaks and hunched over even more than the others. He gripped the edge of the cloth tightly with claws that would wing it all. Alice rushed over and grabbed the shawl and yanked it anyway. "Aha!" she cried, wondering vaguely in the back of her head when she had decided it was all right to act like a 7-year-old ruffian again. Spinning out of the linsey-woolsey fabric wasn't a bird, although it did indeed have some bird-like attributes. A beak and wings certainly allowed him to hide out amongst the town birds, but his ears and tail and lion hindquarters had to stay firmly under cloth to pass. He let out a fearsome yelp, exposing teeth with his beak, again certainly not bird-like at all. Then he curled his arms together quickly as if protecting something. "Oh!" the Hatter said, as if nothing untoward had happened. "Hello, Griffin." "A griffin!" Alice cried out. "I've always thought you were imaginary and fantastic beasts." "Well, that's a fine how-do-you-do," the Griffin said with a little wiry, looking left and right and trying to protect whatever was in his arms. "I don't suppose there's any use in telling you that as of this moment you're the only little girl in Wonderland, and just as imaginary and fantastic." She's not little anymore," the Dodo pointed out, still preening. "But what about Marianne?" Alice hushed. "Hush, hush," the Griffin said, desperately putting one clawed paw awkwardly over her mouth while keeping the other one curled around something protectively. "Do you want to get us all killed?" "What's that you've got there?" Alice asked, somewhat muffled, unable to contain her curiosity, and reaching for his paw. She pulled back with a cry when something horrific and tentacly extended and retracted itself. Whatever it was snaked up quickly the Griffin's arm and under the voluminous cuff of his coat, reappearing as a lump at the nape of his neck. After a moment, the capped head of a timid green thing with golden eyes peeped out. Oh! Alice cried in relief. It wasn't, as she feared, the horrid thing from the maids at all. Bill! Poor old Bill the gardener! But rather than being equally excited by this reunion, the little lizard fainted dead away, mumbling something about her being even bigger this time. I don't understand this at all, Alice said, frowning. I'm the same size as these town birds, who ought to be small, like real birds, aren't they? But I'm normal size compared to Bill. Are we all small, or are the townsbirds large, or something happens to Bill? Leave it to Alice to be talking about the general size of things when we're all about to be killed, the Griffin said mournfully. Silly, fantastic creatures, these little girls. Actually, we're on our way to join with M.A. right now. They had a step in meeting. Come join us, the dodo whispered. We'll travel to the Grundaround together. She'll never fit in there. She's far too big, the Griffin squawked in a whisper. Now, which fantastic imaginary piece is wasting time talking about my size? Alice demanded, hands on hips. Oh, look at that! A shop had opened and folded out one of its horizontally shuttered windows, looking as so formed a shelf. On top of this, a baker set up pies to cool. Caramel, black thistle, and ginger worm, along with tiny square seed cakes that smelled amazing. Not that Alice had ever smelled a seeded cake before, known beforehand what a good smelling one smelled like. Perhaps time in the bird town was changing here. Eat me was spelled out in pine nuts upon the top of each cake. Let me try just one of these. Perhaps I shall shut up like a telescope, she said, taking one and nibbling it. The baker's winking hand slapped it ineffectually at her, but there were no other ramifications. The cake was nutty and buttery with a distinct hint of grasshopper. All five of them waited to see what would happen. The dodo, the hatter, the dormouse, and even the griffin and bird holding their collective breaths. Nothing. Alice gulped down the rest of the cake, barely chewing what seemed to waste. It was so delicious. Still, nothing. Perhaps you really have forgotten how, the dodo said. I can't imagine that's so, Alice said. I remember exactly what it felt like. Remembering isn't the same as knowing, the griffin said accusingly. You've been schooled terribly if you think that's so. That's it, the hatter cried. You've filled your head with all the wrong things since you left. You pushed all the good things out. You need to unlearn them, unremember them. You with your uns, Alice said fondly, like unbirthdays. But everything I've learned is necessary, in my world, and anyway, I couldn't unlearn it all if I tried. But you haven't tried. What's 9 times 10? Forget it, the hatter shouted. What is the capital of Cumbria? Forget it, the dodo shouted. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen sparrow? Forget it, shouted the griffin, apparently also forgetting he was hiding from anyone or anything. I beg your pardon, said a passing sparrow, unladen except for his small briefcase. The 4 travelers, Bill was so passed out, began to sing. Forget the cheese and forget the fife, forget the flies a-buzzing. Forget the one about the pair o' brick red Bristol cousins. Forget your name and forget your meat, forget the Earl of Plumbing. Forget the time and forget the words, and all commence with humming. And of course they hummed the last stanza, wherever it was. We shall take it to the forest of forgetting, the hatter cried. They shall forget all the silliness of the other world and start to go shrinking and growing and become a powerful weapon. And then we can get to the Grundaround and we'll find Mary Ann and we'll all have tea. I'm not sure I like the forgetting everything, Alice said uneasily, or being some sort of powerful weapon. But if it's for the good of Wonderland, I suppose it's worth a try. She had been suspicious of the shrinking and growing the first time around as well, but rapidly, grown used to it, and maybe this would be the same. And the hatter was, at least, beginning to act like his old self. A little more logical than he ever was, but shouting nonsense in songs and poetry. His head did seem a trifle bit larger, too. Let us go, then, you and I, he began, taking her gallantly by the hand. No dramatic subtitle free verse poetry now. Stop, we're done with that. Rhymes only, the dodo said, dragging him away by his ear. As they walked out of the village and through the bright sunlight, Alice observed how strange it was for her companions to be staying with her. Generally in Wonderland, she spent only a little while with each creature or person, or both, before everything changed and she moved on to the next thing. But there were a little marching band now. The Hatter even pumping his arms like a drum major. The Griffin mostly walked upright because beside him, but sometimes dropped on all fours and trotted like an absolutely enormous dog with wings. The Dodo chuckled to himself, and Bill had consented to ride on his beak, keeping one wary and distrustful eye on Alice. The Dodo slept in someone's pocket. The landscape did that thing it always did, seemingly and silently roll into something entirely different. The vague seaside air with its accompanying grasses and black-white checkered floor became more of a golden meadow, which, as often happened in the afternoon, wound up in deep, lush shadow from some hill or knoll no one could see. A lovely forest sprang up rather suddenly, like a fog had disappeared and revealed what it hid. Soft pine and cushy oak and dappled spots of sunlight like a painting by Corot. A ridiculous straight-running brook, almost a canal, bordered it. But it was apparently unnatural, insomuch as anything in Wonderland was natural. "I'm remembering it all now," Alice mused to herself. "Everything here changes unexpectedly, but somehow we always wind up right where the next bit of action is. When I was little, I just went wild and didn't follow my impulses and wound up at the next place. I should keep that in mind. Wonderland knows what's talking to you. I should trust that." There were only two off-notes to the otherwise perfect Arcadian scene. One was with the smoke that came from somewhere beyond the forest. It wasn't from a wood fire or smelled foul. The other was a sign hammered up on an otherwise innocent oak, whitewashed and red-painted. "Free of traders. Inspected by W. Rabbit. Wednesday." A crude symbol of a rabbit was hastily daubed on at the bottom. "Which Wednesday I remember," the Griffin mused, scratching his chin. "One from the last batch, I assume." "I think the next ones are all full," the Dodo said, pulling out a pocket watch. Is it still always tea time with you, Hatter?" Alice said curiously. "Oh, Tom and I met up a long time ago," the Hatter said moodily. "He wanted to make amends before he went, and with the Queen of Hearts in charge, there's never tea any more. For anyone." "Isn't it funny?" Alice said, reaching out a hand to tentatively touch the sign. "Last time I was here, all I wanted to do was find and chase the White Rabbit. And this time, no matter how I try to avoid him, his presence is everywhere." "All right, here we go then," the Dodo said, puffing out his chest and reaching with one large and awkward foot to step over the stream. "Not you, foolish bird," the Hatter cried, pulling him back. "We need to fish out clean Alice on the other side, when she's back to the way she was, an empty girl. We can't do that if we've forgotten who we are and what we're all about as well." "Empty girl?" Alice said. "I don't think—" "Off you go," the Griffin cried, gamely, and pushed her over the stream. Another long one. Is it just me, or are these chapters vary in sizes and lengths? Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and tune in to the next one. Until then, stay big, everyone.